Gear and skills are essential in any survival situation. Having the right thing on hand at the right time is very important. But I think there is something that's even more important than any gear or any skill, and that is your mindset. Your mindset can be a make or break, and it can be the difference between you surviving and you just becoming a statistic. So come along with us as we talk about the 8 essential points for your mindset in a survival situation. Let's get to it. The first thing is understanding the situation. When we enter a survival scenario, our body will react, our heart will pound, our adrenaline will pump, and our fear will take over. This is known as survival stress, and it's really, really important to get us out of danger very quickly. But in prolonged situations, we have to learn how to control that fear. We have fight, flight, or freeze when we enter these situations. And how do we deal with that and keep ourselves from going into condition black? When stress takes over, it overrides the logical part of our brain. And it leads to impulsive and reactive actions. And we have to learn how to train ourselves and use simple techniques to get over that stress and calm our body down so that we understand how we're supposed to react in these situations. So what technique can we use in this situation to calm our bodies down after we've been introduced to high stress survival type situations? One of my favorite techniques is what we call box breathing, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Breathing in, if you can just visualize a square, and you're going up as you inhale and you're counting to 4. You're holding that breath at the top for 4 count, you're exhaling in a 4 count, and then at the bottom of your exhale, you're holding for a 4 count. It's a very simple process, but simple is good because it's something we can remember. And this will help your body, your central nervous system, your heart, your brain, to the blood to return to those so that we can think clearly and we can make logical decisions and calm ourselves down. So try that out. It's important to practice these things. So try box breathing out. And the next time that you have a stressful event, try and calm yourself down through this technique. There's a thing called the rules of 3. 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter in extreme conditions, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. But I think there's actually a 5th one that we don't think about very often, and that's 3 seconds of panic. That can ruin everything. So we have to be ready for these types of situations. Imagine you're lost, and instead of stopping, you just take off running. Now you're not only lost, but you're also tired and vulnerable. And that's what we do when we react to in fear and we don't actually calm ourselves down and take a moment to get centered. That's why this is so important. So let's stick to the rule of 3s when we're actually thinking through our next process and what we need to prioritize in our survival, whether it be immediate survival or it be long-term survival. We always have to think through that and prioritize what's most important. And this brings us to our next point. I think this one is as important as having a survival knife or a fire starter or a tarp or even a jacket in a real-world survival situation. Because this is being positive. I think positivity is the most important tool that we have in our toolbox, because if we have a negative outlook, if we tell ourselves we're not going to make it, you're absolutely right. You're not going to make it. So having positivity on your side is the most important thing when it comes to mindset. And this can be a very powerful tool. So how do we do this when things are stacked against us? I think it's stuff like celebrating the small wins. Hey, I found a dry place to sleep. Hey, I was able to build a fire in a wet terrain. Hey, I found some food. All of those little things that add up and help you stay positive in a negative situation. The next thing is, I think, keeping track of what's going on. If you have something to write with, write down your thoughts. A lot of people from battlefields and from wars took solace in the moments that they had to journal, the moments that they had to write things down, how they were feeling. And then they were able to look back and say, wow, I was able to make it through because I was tracking how I was feeling and what I was saying and understanding where I was at mentally and physically. And I think the other very, very important part of this, and personally for me, my faith is a big part of my life. And if we have faith to fall back on, if we can trust in God in these situations, that's going to put us ahead when it comes to surviving the unsurvivable. The next step is visualization and planning. This is a powerful tool because it keeps our minds occupied, but also allows us to be motivated for the next move. And so that can look like, hey, I'm going to plan to find water, I'm going to try and find shelter, I'm going to do all of these little steps, but it keeps our minds active and it helps us not to give into the fear of loneliness, seclusion, and quiet. So if we're constantly thinking through these things, it's an important thing for survival. So how do we do this? How do we plan? How do we execute our plan? I think the biggest thing is to break it up into manageable chunks. So first, find water. Second, find shelter. And we prioritize this based off of the need, just like when we were talking about planning and looking at our body and how we're going to react in the rule of threes. This is all important stuff, but we need to have a plan, break it down, and have it in a manageable chunk so that we don't get overwhelmed and our minds are constantly working on the next step. The next thing that we have to think about is loneliness. A lot of survival situations, we end up being on our own. And when you have a group of people, it's much easier to not let your mind spiral into negativity. But when you're alone, man, your thoughts can really cause you to spiral into negativity and never think that you're going to make it out. Think of the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks. He was on an island by himself for years, and he had to find things to help him get through that seclusion and loneliness. So we have to do the same thing. How do we do that? I think the biggest thing is staying busy. Busying ourselves about what we need to get done. Whether it be fashioning tools, weapons, creating shelters, gathering food, or finding water, all of this is important and we should stay busy at our next task. That's why this kind of adds on to the planning and strategizing section. This is an important part of it, but it also helps our mind to stay busy. And maybe even we take time to visualize conversations, have conversations with ourselves, talk out loud, as long as we're in a safe area. But this helps our minds stay busy so that we don't focus so much on the loneliness of being in a survival situation by ourselves. The next one is the power of routine. When we're in a survival situation, routine can be a lifesaver because it allows us to feel control in utter chaos. It gives us that sense of being in control. So that looks like we start our morning. We get up, we check our water purification, we check our gear, we confirm everything's good. We gather resources that we need and we plot or plan where we're going that day. If we're moving, obviously we want to chart where we're moving to and where we're moving from. But routine is a huge part of survival. But what happens when things don't go as planned? What happens when you have to adapt? That brings us to our next one. Adaptability is the key to survival. We have to be able to understand that we're not maybe always going to have things go according to the way we planned it. So maybe we lost some of our gear. Maybe we were robbed. Maybe we have less food than we originally thought. But we have to learn how to adapt. And that is all mindset as well. We have to think through scenarios. We have to understand that things may not always go our way and have contingency plans, have alternate routes that we can go, alternate things that we can do. This is all a part of mindset and planning for the unexpected. And adapting to the things that you're not planned for, you're not ready for, is one of the biggest keys to surviving. So survival is not only physical, it's mental. a big part of it is mental. So putting our minds in the right place and training ourselves mentally is the key to survival. Your mind or your body will not go where your mind hasn't gone before. So think through these things. Get practice. Learn how to build fires in wet conditions. Learn how to do all of these things, because the physical side of it is only aided by the mental side of it. So we have to mentally prepare ourselves, and we have to get reps of that mentally. If this happens, this is what I'm going to do. We have to walk through those things in our minds before something ever happens, because if we don't, when it does happen, our bodies are not going to be prepared for that. So we've learned that your mind is just as important as tools and skills when it comes to survival. Having control of your emotions, staying calm, staying focused, and planning out each detail as you move through a survival situation is very important. So get out there and learn new skills and prepare your mind for the day that we really hope never comes, but when it does, you'll be ready mentally to handle whatever comes your way. Guys, if you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. We are doing more and more content for you guys in the survival vein, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you guys on the next one.